it's just an example. Purdue losing to Fresno State is okay. We still win the Big Ten West. But me,
Really, Napier gets fired. I'm just kidding.
really the best time of the year. I will be seated watching Red Zone for 7 hours on Sunday. What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to an episode of Backyard Banter. Johnny, James, Tanner. Subscribe if you're new. We're trying to get to 400. I was thinking today, 400 by Halloween's probably too early. By Thanksgiving's probably too late. I just say we do my birthday, which is right in the middle, November 11th. So I think 400 subscribers by my birthday is more than fair. We're over 360, which is pretty cool. Almost at 400. But no more pleasantries. We had absolute cinema in college football. One of the greatest games I've watched in recent memory, definitely this year. Georgia, Bama. First of all, you can just lay it out the whole time. Going into this game, you knew it was somehow, some way going to be a thriller. And then James and I watched this entire game together, and it was 28-0 before anyone could even do anything. So I will go to you guys first because I have a lot to say about this game, as do we all. Tanner, we will go to you first. There's a million things to ask you. I will start with this before you go in because I want to know. Does this loss change your perception of Georgia this season?
Yes, I think it does. I think it does for me because I thought they were the best team in the SEC, or top two in the SEC at least preseason. I thought it was going to be them in Texas, and it changes my perception. I don't think I'm any more negative on them. I think they're top three in the SEC now instead of top two. I think Bama has joined that tier one in the SEC of Texas and Georgia with this win over Georgia. And so I think that kind of changes the way I look at Georgia, because when I look at Georgia, I look at one of the two best teams in the SEC until now. Now they're one of the three best teams in the SEC. So I would say it definitely changes things for me.
How about being the third best team in the conference and still being a top 5 team in the country? Talk about how top heavy. James, I'm going to ask you a different question. Does this make Alabama right now the favorite to win the national championship?
For me, no. For me, it's still a no. I still think Texas is the best team in the country. Heck, sometimes I even think Ohio State's still better than Bama right now. But you look at that win, and it's such an amazing win. How they did it, again, like you said, you started it off by saying this game needed to be great. It was great, but this, to me, Alabama, Jalen Milroe, congratulations, you just confirmed your seat in New York. You're the clear favorites to win the Heisman, which I kind of disagree with a little bit, but that's a later conversation. Jalen Milroe was unreal. He was unreal. He was ungodly. Johnny, you had mentioned that he needed to make some throws to win the game. Well, he made a throw, right?
That's all I needed to do. I told him I said he wouldn't make a throw to win, and he made a singular throw to win.
And he did. He used his legs very well. 16 carries for 115 plus yards, 2 tuds. He was very good. But to me, Bama still has question marks because the best teams in the country, in my eyes, are the Ohio States, the Texas. I even group Tennessee up there because they haven't faltered yet. Those are 3 teams that can absolutely air you out. And I think Alabama's one big weakness is their secondary, and it was clear. Carson Beck took 17 shots in that game of over 20 yards, and 14 of them were in the second half. Luckily for Bama, he only completed 5 of them. But Bama's secondary, I think, is the one weakness that they have right now, and I think it's concerning. So I will tell you this. After watching that game, I don't have any of these teams in my national championship. I think they're 2 very good teams that on any given Saturday, if I had to watch them play again, it's amazing. My overreaction to the game is that Georgia's ceiling is 10 wins. They still have Texas in a few weeks. They got Tennessee in a month. And then they've still got a few other tough SEC games in there. So to me, I look at this game and you learn a lot about both teams. Johnny, we're all big on Carson Beck. I'm not huge on him. I'm not. He's a great quarterback.
Not anymore. I'll tell you.
Yeah, he looked incompetent in the first half, and then came out and balled in the second half. But I don't know, because both teams they both have different strengths and different weaknesses. Alabama, their secondary is not very good, and I think it could be blown up by a Tennessee, by a Texas, but at the same time, what they did was so impressive and so dominant in that first half that if they get that kind of style, if you get a Bama first half for a full game against the Texas, they're gonna beat Texas, right? And if you get a Georgia second half for a full game against Texas, they're gonna beat Texas, right? So like two teams that are more than capable, but I just worry about those two things with the secondary and the quarterback for both teams that I think the ceiling for Georgia is 10 wins, and I borderline would say the same thing for Bama. Joel Klatt thinks Georgia came out better after this loss than Bama did after this win. I disagree with him. Because again, I think Georgia's ceiling is 10 wins, but I don't know if that's crazy. Again, they already lost the game, so it is what it is. But you look at that game now. We talked about it yesterday. We talked about it in person. This was the game of the year, right? But guess what? It was the game of the week because in a few weeks we got Georgia Texas, and that could be the game of the year.
Yeah, and Tennessee Bama is that same exact day, and the week before that is Oregon Ohio State. So a lot of big games. James, to your point, Georgia. You can go first, too.
I would just like to say I don't know if I credit Georgia. I mean, obviously, it's pretty remarkable that they came back in that game. But I don't think I'm going to credit Georgia as much as people are because I think part of that is just Bama was playing not to lose in the second half. They're sitting back in a prevent defense. They're not going to do anything ridiculous on offense that's going to make them turn the ball over. You know what I mean? Like, I just think part of that comeback was the way Bama was playing the game that second half, which was to hold on to the lead. And sometimes I think that happens a lot in football where a team gets a big lead and then they just kind of coast. And the next thing you know, it's a ball game again. So I don't know if I necessarily credit Georgia as much for that. I was very impressed with Bama. You guys said you don't think Jalen Milroe can make enough throws. Jalen Milroe has always had a really good deep ball. He's always been able to hit people over the top. And guess what he did to beat Georgia? He threw a couple deep balls and he hit them. So I'm very impressed with Bama coming out of this. I would agree with you, James. Jalen Milroe is not my Heisman right now. I would have him second. But, very impressed with Bama.
Yeah. To Jalen Milroe's credit, I think his best throw of the night was the wheel route to the running back. I thought that was his best throw. He put that in perfectly. The one to Ryan Williams, first of all, Ryan Williams is an alien. So if you just put in his vicinity, is unfair. So I will say, James, to your point, I originally in the preseason, I didn't pick Georgia to go to the SEC championship game because here's who they still have. At Texas, at Ole Miss, and Tennessee are still on their schedule. Ole Miss lost for the week, whatever. They still play Florida and Jacksonville. Traditionally, that's still a close game. And don't worry, they get the 17th SEC the 19th SEC team in UMass, who's playing in the SEC schedule this year because Missouri goes there in a few weeks. But so many things stick out. So, I thought Georgia was going to roll. And not roll, but, win semi-comfortably. And I'm watching this game, and I look at Carson Beck, and I watched a lot of Carson Beck last year. He's not the same quarterback. I don't know what is going on. I don't know if it's a private jet deal that he signed in the offseason with NIL. I mean, it is.
He's got a girl.
Something.
He doesn't have Brock Bowers.
That is a good point. He doesn't have Brock Bowers and or Ladd McConkey. But, I mean, it's not like he's throwing the scrubs. I mean, he had three receivers with almost over 80 yards. He had two guys right at 100 yards. So I don't think that's a fair assessment. And, look, Jalen Milroe dominated this game on the ground. I think he did just enough through the air. I'm still not this crazy believer in Jalen Milroe as a passer. Like, he still has, like minimal to none intermediate passing game. And somehow they're still winning without that. But I'm still saying throughout the line, eventually he's going to need to make those throws more consistently. But again, when you have Ryan Williams, it doesn't matter. There's a few things that was wrong on. I thought Georgia was going to be able to match up athletically with Ryan Williams on the outside, and they just simply couldn't throughout the entire game. And he's 17 years old. And Georgia, who had the best secondary in the country the last 2 or 3 years, couldn't match up with him. So I was very wrong on that front. And then Georgia came out in the second half and made the adjustments to stop Jalen Milroe for the most part as a runner. And they completely shut down the Alabama running backs. If you take out Jalen Milroe's 115-plus yards, Bama's running backs didn't really do anything. So credit to Georgia for making the adjustments and still believing. But I think the biggest story here is Kalen DeBoer outcoached Kirby Smart through about 3/4 of this game. And if no one wants to give Kalen DeBoer credit, I will. He's undefeated against Dan Lanning, Kirby Smart, and there's one other one that was on that Twitter graphic that I'm forgetting. But he's just unreal.
Same thing.
Who's the last one, T?
Not Lincoln. Sorry, Lincoln Riley, maybe. Lincoln Riley.
I mean, are you kidding me with that? His one loss when they had teams were adequate with was to Jim Harbaugh, and no one was beating that Michigan team last year except for maybe Georgia was the only team I thought that could match up with them. So I think that was my biggest takeaway. I'm sitting there, and for the first time in the last 5 years, I'm seeing Kirby Smart be out-coached. Like last year when Bama beat them, Bama had just dominated them in the offensive line. That's not coaching. Bama's offensive line turned the corner, and they were able to dominate. In this game, that happened through the first quarter and a half, and then Georgia adjusted really well and really shut down Milroe. So if they were to play again, I would still pick Georgia because Bama needed 4 Carson Beck turnovers to win that game at home.
Yeah,
but
I wouldn't. I wouldn't. I would. There's no way I'm picking Georgia to beat Bama. Kirby Smart can't beat Alabama.
Yeah, that's another big thing.
He's 1-6. He's 1-6, and his one win was a natty, right? Like,
and honestly, if Jameson Williams didn't get hurt in that natty, Bama probably wins that natty as well. But
1-6 since he's been hired. So
if they played again, I would pick Georgia on a neutral field. But that's not to take away what Alabama did. I mean, they were good when they needed to be. James, you said their secondary is bad. It's bad by Alabama standard. It's not bad in terms of a national ranking in the secondary. They got some young. I mean, you can look. It's just not like they have a lot of young guys that are really talented. The guy that caught the interception at the end, he's a 5-star freshman. They got the transfer from Michigan, who's going to be at least a third round pick now. So to answer my 2 questions, this doesn't necessarily change my perception of Georgia because I just think they got hit in the mouth in the first half, and it took them a little bit longer to come back. And the needle for me, do I think Alabama can win a national championship? Yes. If you had to ask me right now who's winning the national championship, Bama's not my national championship game. But that doesn't take away from what an amazing atmosphere it was in Bryant-Denny Stadium. That's the best atmosphere in college football right now. There is none better than what just happened. I mean, that was incredible. And it doesn't take away from anything that the game was. But I will say, at least I told James, I went 1 for 2 on my blowout bets because Kansas State did roll Oklahoma State. But, yeah, do you guys got anything more on the Bama game?
No, because I'm so glad you brought up the Big 12 because Tanner made a great point at how crazy the Big 12 is. And somehow on Saturday, it completely got 5,000 times crazier. Like, what in the world is going on in the Big 12? Colorado's 15-point dogs, and they win by 27. Like, what do they call UCF?
That was the most surprising score to me and during the entire weekend. USC had the 2nd ranked rushing attack in the country. I didn't want to say it because I didn't want to pick 3 blowouts. My third one, I thought UCF was going to roll Colorado. And, I mean, if you give Shedeur had 1 pressure and 2 sacks, and by Colorado State, that's a really good. And his completion percentage was over 80. If you give Shedeur just an average offensive line, he's the best quarterback in the country. When I saw that number, that's pretty incredible. But shout out to Colorado, man. That's the most impressive win. More impressive than them going to beat TCU last year. More impressive than them beating Nebraska last year. Going to UCF and winning that game, I mean, I'll say it, that takes some nuts to do to go do that game after what happened against Baylor. But I agree, Tanner. You hit it right in the head last week.
128 snaps. Travis Hunter had 128 snaps.
I would like to give a quick little shout out to Arizona. Huge bounce back win for them. So we were saying, Utah is going to make the Big 12 championship. I think we're sitting here now. I think Arizona looks pretty good. They've already played the two BYU. Other best teams in the conference, and they went 1-1.
Yeah,
like they're
BYU,
just
and BYU. You can go to BYU's the only team that's undefeated in the Big 12 right now, and it's just crazy. Someone from that conference is going to have a first round bye in the playoff. That's why I don't know if you guys saw when it came out today. The Big Ten and SEC both said in 2026 we should get four automatic teams in, and I think 4 is a little obsessive, but I think each conference should get 2 at this point because what's going on in the Big 12? I mean, it's crazy. I do want to say, Ole Miss losing to Kentucky is a big deal because I think Ole Miss is going to end up being what Florida State is this year. You can't buy a championship even in this era. You still need solid high school recruiting, and they just frankly haven't done that. That's why everyone's saying Lane to Florida, Lane to Florida. I think Lane Kiffin is a heck of a coach, heck of an X and O's guys, but he's Dan Mullen to me, same guy. It isn't really interested in high school recruiting, and I think next year Ole Miss could look like Florida State. Whether it's next year or 2 years from now, that is a massive loss to Kentucky. Shout out Coach Stoops at Kentucky. He's been one of the most underrated coaches in the country for the last 15 years, and he pulls off one of these a year, and it's normally to Florida. So I'm happy it's not to Florida this year. And I mean, that is a massive, massive. It happened early, before, like 7 hours before the Bama game. So, but that is a massive deal in college football.
Yeah, well, I also think my one thing here, real quick, before you go, Tanner, is like you talk about they might be the Florida State, and we don't have to talk about them because we said we'll never give Florida State any more tick. Good God, nobody will ever do what Florida State is doing this season at being a team that people were crying about not making the playoff to now getting 40-balled by SMU. What are we doing? Like
SMU.
What are we doing? SMU's a good team.
Somewhere.
Maybe SMU's good.
It doesn't matter. Florida State was preseason top 10 and was favored to win the ACC. If you'd have said, if you'd have showed someone, we're still in September. If you would have told me a month ago that SMU beats Florida State, I mean, that's front page stuff that you can go to.
Yeah, I think the Ole Miss loss is big just on the front of like making the college football playoff. That's a team that preseason we thought would be pretty comfortably into the playoff. And now with the loss to Kentucky on their hands, they got to navigate an SEC schedule where I don't know exactly what it is, but I'm sure they still play someone. And Ole Miss is a team that when they're sitting with 2 or 3 losses, they're in trouble. They're in trouble. They're probably not going to make the playoff. I think this is a massive loss for the college football landscape. I think it opens up another spot for someone else to get into the playoff that wasn't supposed to preseason.
Yeah, their margin for error, Tanner, to your point, is very slim now because they get Georgia at home. They still go to Florida. Florida, who knows what Florida's going to look like by then. That's still a tough game. And they got at least 2 more games in there that are going to be tricky. Like that, you're completely right. Their margin of error is almost zero. We said before the podcast started, we could do a whole episode on college football. But there was some big time stuff that happened in the NFL. So we're going to transfer over to that. I will say just one more point. I'm going to keep saying it. The Big 12. I cannot get past that the Big 12 is going to have a first round bye in the playoff because, and by the way, Oklahoma State is still ranked. Can you believe that they're still ranked?
And SMU's not. SMU's also not ranked, and they're
neither is Rutgers. Give me Rutgers in the top 25, undefeated. Shout out former Buck Greg Schiano, getting the program back on track. Birthplace of college football there in freaking New Jersey. But anyway, we'll go to the NFL. We're going to do what we did last week. Each of us, before we talk about our teams, are going to talk about a game that stuck out to us the most. Tanner, we will go to you first. What game from yesterday stuck out to you the most?
It's a game that I was not able to watch, but just like when I was scoreboard peeking at the Bears game, really was the one I was looking at the most, and I was the most shocked about too. It's the Minnesota Vikings going into Lambeau, and I know it ended up being a 2-point win, but getting up 28-0 over the Green Bay Packers. This is a Vikings team. I think we had this conversation yesterday, John. There's a decent chance they're going to end up the last remaining unbeaten team in the NFL. It's going to be them or the Chiefs, it looks like. And what were the odds on that preseason? Plus 30,000 probably.
It was insane. We found it yesterday. Yeah.
I mean, you're talking, this is a team that when you take into account the schedule they played and the questions they had all over the roster, all off season, new quarterback, is Justin Jefferson going to be all those questions, and playing the Niners, playing the Texans at Lambeau, and they're sitting here at 4-0. I mean, the Minnesota Vikings have been the most impressive team to me so far this NFL season, which pains me to say because I hate the Minnesota Vikings. I don't like the Minnesota Vikings. I want Sam Darnold to fail. I want J.J. McCarthy to fail. But the thing is, they have a really good head coach. I think this is my hot take. I think the Minnesota Vikings have the best head coach in the NFC North. I think he's a better head coach than Dan Campbell. I think he's a better head coach than Matt LaFleur. And I know for a fact he's a better head coach than Matt Eberflus. What he is doing in Minnesota is impressive. He's winning with less. And this year is probably the worst roster he's had when you take into account how important the quarterback position is. And he's sitting here at 4-0, and they look really good. They don't look like they're going to slow down. Their offense is really good. They got that Aaron Jones pickup, so underrated. He has made this offense way better than when they had Alexander Madison. I mean, the Vikings are legit. Their defense is better. The Minnesota Vikings are legit, and Jordan Love, 4 turnovers. I mean, I know it's his first game back, but I hope and pray he's a one-year wonder. I need this Jordan Love to keep showing up. I need him to keep showing up.
Yeah, I agree with you, Tanner, on the Vikings. I think their coach is a heck of a coach. James, what do you got?
Well, I'll tell you this: he's definitely not the worst because the Matt Eberflus is by far the worst head coach. But we'll get into that. Whatever, it doesn't matter. But I would say the game, they're obviously great games. Like that Chiefs Chargers game was a good game. Obviously Sunday night was kind of crazy. But like the Commanders being 3-1, like to go into Arizona, and Arizona is like a scrappy team because I always say it. I hate watching Kyler Murray play football because he just runs around with his head cut off. But like Kyler Murray is a very competent quarterback 90% of the time, right? And Jaden Daniels has just emerged and looking like, well, he's simply the best quarterback in the draft, right? Like right now, Jaden Daniels is the best quarterback of the draft. And why? Because he's making the simple plays, and that's all you have to do, right? Because occasionally, if you want to chuck a ball down to Scary Terry, which he's also having a good season thus far, right? Like the Commanders are complete offensively because why? They invested in a quarterback after they invested in an offensive line. And the Commanders are giving Jaden Daniels plenty of time to be able to go through his progression and find a guy in the middle of the field. If you watch like play-by-play of what the Commanders are able to do, like a lot of people are discrediting Jaden Daniels because he's hitting a lot of checkdowns. But it's like his checkdowns are still 8-yard routes, whereas other quarterbacks, cough, cough, Caleb Williams, his checkdown is 3 yards behind the line of scrimmage. And so, like, it's impressive to watch a rookie quarterback come in and exceed and do so well. And now you look at the Commanders and they're 3-1, and it's impressive. Brian Robinson has been very good for the Commanders. Like, I think the Commanders are a team moving forward that you really just have to clearly watch out for. I mean, they're 3-1. They're sitting there like, sure, why not? I mean, why can't they have a decent year? I mean, Dallas is looking a little shaky. Eagles obviously look very shaky. The Giants still have Daniel Jones, so they suck. I mean, the Commanders have more than enough right to win the NFC East. It was an impressive win. Arizona, I'm officially bought out of them. But, Jaden Daniels is doing his thing, and he's been very, very impressive to watch.
Someone really smart said in the preseason that Jane Daniels could have a C.J. Stroud type effect, and Washington could make the playoffs. I don't know who said it, but whoever said that
he's dumb as hell.
Whoever said that got flamed in the comment section on almost all of our social media platforms, and I cannot wait because like if you asked every GM, I think they would all take Caleb Williams over Jaden Daniels, even right now. I will say that, but like 81.6%, I believe is his completion percentage, highest in NFL history through 4 games. Like that's big time. He's like Lamar Jackson, but more accurate throwing the football, and it's scary because he's just as fast. But like I'm gonna pump the brakes because he takes a lot of unnecessary hits, and he is going to get hit one time, and he is going to. And this is NFL. Even look, he played in the SEC, which is the closest thing you have to the NFL, but nothing compares to the NFL. And he still takes some of these hits. I'm like, get down! Like, what are we doing? But yeah, I mean, they punted for the first time in like 15 drives, which is insane. I will say my game, the one that stuck out to me most, I had 2. I'm not going to go in depth on both of them, but Atlanta and New Orleans, I think Atlanta is terrible. They somehow beat New Orleans. They only beat them because they scored 2 non-offensive touchdowns. And to say that everyone was saying, oh, the after the first 2 weeks, oh, the Saints are this juggernaut offensively. They're going to go. They're not. I still think the Saints could finish bottom in this division. Well, the Panthers don't really count as a team. The Panthers should be regulated to the freaking UFL. But I think the Saints are not any good. I think they're going to win 5-6 games max. So, but the thing is, as a Bucs fan, I think the Bucs by far have impressed me the most in that division. And the Bucs go to Atlanta on Thursday night, so that'll be a big game. But one that stood out to me the most, and the one that I don't think enough people are talking about, Denver going into New Jersey and beating the Jets. I'm sick of seeing Aaron Rodgers just flutter out there. His body language is atrocious. He's 40 years old, and everything is. And the press conference, he gets asked a question about Robert Saleh. He's like, "Guess we're not on the same page." It's just like this team. Everyone wants them to be good. Everyone's trying to propel them to be good. They are not good. Robert Saleh is not an adequate NFL head coach, and now he has no more excuses this time. So if they don't make the playoffs, he's getting fired because you have one of the greatest throwers of the football ever on your team right now, and you have Garrett Wilson, who's a bona fide number one, and you got two other receivers with Lazard and Williams, who are high quality receivers, and you got Breece Hall and Braylon Allen. And despite feelings about Braylon Allen on this podcast, he's still a good back, as is Breece Hall. And that defense is still, they have one of the better D-lines in football. There's no excuse, even in the torrential downpour, that you should score 9 points. It just cannot happen. Much less, Bo Nix had -7 passing yards for a time. Cortland Sutton finished with 60 yards receiving. Bo Nix finished with 53. And they won. Like, that is inexcusable. And I'm not seeing enough. I think the Jets suck. I think the Jets are going to win 7 games max. And I want them to be good because I like this story. I loved Robert Saleh as a defensive coordinator when he was with the Niners, but they just simply aren't. And I'll hold them accountable.
Yeah. Talk about just blood fuming out of the eyes watching that football game. Like, it was awful. It was god awful. Thank God there are other games going on, but yeah, that was sad to watch.
I didn't get to watch the game, so I didn't necessarily get to see how bad it is, but I'm not going to sit here and a quarter of the way through an NFL season and declare that Aaron Rodgers and a healthy Aaron Rodgers is going to win 7 games. That doesn't happen. I think Rodgers is going to turn it around. I think the Jets have so much talent, and it's so early. So I'm not out on the Jets. I'm sure it was ugly yesterday. When you see a score that's 10-9 in the NFL, it's pretty ugly. Typically. So I'm sure it was, but I'm not going to give up on the Jets just yet.
I hope so. I hope you're right because I like to see the Jets make the playoffs, but their schedule is no joke. I mean, they got they still got the Bills twice, and if Tua ever raises from the ground, they still got the Dolphins twice. And for being what were they, a third place team last year, they got a pretty tough third place schedule that they're going to go through right now. But it's time to talk about the Bears. And I will say before I kick it to you, it is confirmed that DeAndre Swift watches Backyard Banter because I can say for a fact that no one put him on blast more than we did. But Tanner, you were there. First of all, how was the atmosphere? Second of all, were you impressed with the win?
Yeah, so I'll start with the atmosphere. I think this is like my 4th or 5th Bears game I've been to. I've been fortunate enough with as bad as the Bears have been in my lifetime. I've only seen one loss. I've seen a lot of wins. And I would say atmosphere-wise, you could tell it's a little bit different in there this year. You could tell there's a little bit more electricity. I think the fan base is obviously very excited with Caleb Williams coming to town, but you can tell that like this team and this fan base, both of them want to win. I mean, obviously the team wants to win more than the fan base, but it's pretty clear both the team and the fan base want to win very badly. You can tell it's a different vibe inside Soldier Field this year. I think it's going to be a very tough place for teams to go in and win this year with how good the Bears defense is. So very encouraged. I think the atmosphere at Soldier Field is going to help the Bears get a lot of wins this year. Very excited. Had a blast. Great time at the game. Was standing up every third down. But now they get to the actual football part. Very impressed. Just in terms of like the whole thing, like when I'm thinking big picture and looking at this whole season so far, week 1 to week 4, the improvement out of Caleb Williams and the offense is unbelievable. I am thrilled with the improvement I've seen out of Caleb and out of the offense. I would say the last 6 out of 7 quarters this offense have played, I've been very impressed with them. Very excited for what this offense can be later down the road, later on in the season. I think Caleb Williams looked really good yesterday. Statistically, wasn't anything crazy. 17 to 23, I think 157 yards, touchdown, no picks. He looks comfortable in the pocket. He's actually sitting in the pocket. He's reading through progression. He's taking the checkdowns when they're there. He's hitting seam routes up the middle that we haven't seen a Bears quarterback make throws like that. So very excited for Caleb Williams. And the Bears, I think he's improved dramatically so far. And you take a look ahead at the schedule. You got the Carolina Panthers next week, and then you got the Jags in London. So you're playing the two worst teams in football, in my opinion, the next 2 weeks. Go win both those games. You're 4-2. You have a bye, and go figure it out. Go figure out how to make the playoffs. Very happy with the Bears. James, what do you think?
Yeah, obviously I was able to watch this game, watch most of it with Johnny here. So it was, we never saw any teaser cams, unfortunately. You never made it onto the TV. I had to listen to Mark Sanchez instead talk about that, and couldn't be I don't think I dislike another color commentator more than Mark
You're
Sanchez.
just mad at his man bun.
Absolutely, it's the man bun. Absolutely, it's the man bun. But anyway, there's a few takeaways. I can't keep saying it, but the offensive line somehow is just still god awful, atrocious, whatever. Like Tanner, I don't care.
It was
if you
better.
disagree.
It was better.
It's still atrocious. Because here's the thing. You made a comment like you were okay with watching Caleb Williams like sit there in the pocket. I'm not okay with it. Like he is gonna get hurt and killed if he remains in the pocket for as long as he is. Like it was my issue with the Bears when they had Mitch Trubisky. Mitch Trubisky was a Pro Bowl quarterback and was so good when he was able to roll out of the pocket. Justin Fields is having a decent year with the Steelers because they're rolling him out. The Bears drafted another quarterback who is more of a pocket passer but has the ability to roll out, and I need to see it more because he's taking a lot of unnecessary hits because, frankly, the tackles aren't going to be able to hold the edge for too long. Like, and next thing you know, he has nowhere to go, and he's getting sandwiched by two guys that weigh 700 pounds combined, including Darnell Wright, who's probably falling on him as well. So, like, I understand what you're saying. It did look better, and I do think because it looked better, we were able to get Swift going. But in terms of the offensive line in a passing offense, it's still struggling, and I need to watch Caleb Williams roll out. I need it. I need it. He was very good in college like that. When you watch Caleb Williams in college, what game did he struggle, right? Notre Dame. What did Notre Dame make him do? Made him sit in the pocket, and Notre Dame got home, and he wasn't able to succeed. So how do you not take that? You watch Caleb Williams be so efficient, moving outside the pocket, rolling to his right, finding a receiver or a tight end coming up the middle of the field. Like, the difference to me for the Bears will be very good if Caleb Williams can get outside the pocket, find Cole Kmet, maybe find a Rome Odunze, 25 yards down the field. If you can get Swift to continue to make this, Johnny and I looked at each other like, man, he is watching Backyard Banter. We did say that. We were like, he is a great Backyard Banter fan. But for me, for the Bears to be a playoff team like you want, Tanner, like I want, like everybody listening who's a Bears fan wants, as of right now, the status of our offensive line needs to make Caleb Williams realize that he's got to roll out. And that's not all on him. Shane Waldron's got to get something going for him to roll out. I could be wrong, but the Bears have moved up in offensive line rankings. They're now up to 25th overall. So don't say that they're a good offensive line. They're god-awful.
They're not.
But they played better in the run. But I'm telling you, Caleb Williams is getting smoked, and he's getting blindsided, and he's got to roll out of the pocket. And I think that's the key. That's the key for the Bears. It's a good win. The Rams are a good team. The defense, I still think, borderline won us a game. I'm high on the Bears. You can disagree, but it's okay. But I'm telling you, Caleb Williams has to roll out. That is a fact.
I'm gonna tell you why they shouldn't do that. We know you're right in the fact that we know he can roll out and make plays outside of the pocket. But what was Mitch Trubisky only good at? Rolling out of the pocket. What was Justin Fields only good at? Getting outside of the pocket. We need a quarterback that can sit in the pocket and make a throw. We know he can do all the improvising and stuff outside of the pocket. He needs to learn how to sit in the pocket, read through a progression, and make a throw. And that's what they're doing with him. He's learning how to run an NFL system. And I love it. I love what they're doing with Caleb Williams.
I think it's terrible because this is not the time to learn because guess what? It's going to have a season career-ending injury because you can't. This is not just trial and error. Like Mitch Trubisky was very good rolling outside, but guess what? They never had him do roll out. Justin Fields has been very good for the Steelers this year because he's rolling out. Guess what? The Bears never had him do. The Bears are trying to form a pocket passer out of a guy that's not a pocket passer. That's like the Ravens saying, "Hey, Lamar, dude, you got to stop running the ball. Like we want you to sit there in the pocket and throw it. Like get Caleb moving, get him moving. Like you're not going to create a pocket passer out of someone who was not a pocket passer in college. Why are we trying to do that? Play to his strengths. He was the #1 overall draft pick for the last 2 seasons now. People have been talking about tanking for Caleb Williams for 2 years now. Play to his strength. He can roll out. He's not a great pocket passer. Let it roll out. That's all I'm saying.
Here's why. Because when he sits in the pocket and he's reading a defense through a whole entire progression, the defense has to guard the whole entire field. When you roll someone out of the pocket, they're covering half the field. They are covering half the field when you roll them out. He has got to sit there and learn how to read a defense. The Bears will be so much harder to cover defensively if he can become a good pocket passer, which he has been unbelievably better at the last 2 weeks than he was the first 2.
And he will continually be a better pocket passer in future years when we upgrade the offensive line. But this season, the offensive line is going to be what it is. Like, it's going to be bad. It's going to be bad. So if you want to make the playoffs this year, you have to adapt a little. You get the offensive line better for next season, you say, okay, we're going to be able to keep you in the pocket a little bit longer. I think we're both just whatever about the Bears. Like, we are super confident in Caleb Williams. That to me is very clear. But I just want them to play to his strengths, to the offensive line strength right now. And I personally think it is rolling him out a little bit more. And hopefully in years to come, we have an offensive line where he's able to sit there for 3 to 5 seconds and feel comfortable like Jaden Daniels is right now. But unfortunately, he's not, because dudes are coming on him real quick. So pause.
That's enough Bears talk. We'll end it. We will end the Bears talk on that. I will say the report stood out to me that the Bears players completely called out Shane Waldron. Was like we need better play calls. Like we need you to be more aggressive with us. And they have a favorable schedule, but hard to see them making significant noise if they do make the playoffs with that offense line and their head coach. But that being said, a team that I think could make noise in the playoffs is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, because my goodness, they are rolling. How about Baker Mayfield right now? Over 900 yards, 8 touchdowns, 1 pick through 4 games. It's pretty darn good. Levante David, future Hall of Famer, 2 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, and a fumble recovery. Like, are you kidding me? 10 tackles. Mike Evans, 93 yards and a tud. Chris Godwin, 70 yards, 6 receptions. Just a massive team effort by the Bucs, and they were 3-1 this time last year. This 3-1 feels significantly different than the 3-1 last year. It just they feel there's a different confidence, and I don't know what it is. I don't know what's instilled from. Todd Bowles is still the head coach, and he's still gonna have to show me that he's gonna be able to coach at a continuity.
There you go.
And but I mean, God, Baker is looking like a top 10 quarterback in football. Do you think the Panthers would love to have Baker Mayfield right now? This version of Baker Mayfield. I mean, it's crazy. And look, Vita Vea came back, and the Bucs had 3 sacks coming in the game. Vita Vea comes back; they had 6 sacks on Sunday. Like that's not a coincidence. And I'm trying not to get my hopes up, because I don't want to be let down when they get 30 balled in Atlanta on Thursday. But I'm just seeing a lot of really good things. Liam Cohen, the thing that impressed me most with him, the new offense coordinator, he had a very bad game plan against Denver. He owned up to it, and he came out and said, we're going to get Mike Evans the ball. First play of the game, 8-yard out to Mike Evans, and you just get him going. Scored a touchdown on the first drive since the first. Hear this, Bucs scored a touchdown on the first drive for the first time since Week 18 of 2022. So it's a long time, and they finally did it yesterday. But cautiously optimistic would be my approach on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
That's fair. They're like, they piss me off because Baker Mayfield is like, he's back. He's good. Mike Evans, good. Chris Godwin, Johnny's been calling it, right? Like, The one thing that they're really missing is just a running back, right? I mean,
they got two
Buck
pretty
Irving.
decent.
They got a running back.
Well,
Don't get
they
me
got
wrong.
two.
Irving.
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing. I just like Baker's throwing the ball 50 plus times a game, and it's like he's been very effective. I don't think you're going to get 30 balled by the Falcons. I think the Falcons are really bad.
Yeah.
But yeah, it like pains me to say the Bucks are a really good team. I don't know why. Like I do like you, Johnny. I really do. But I was more surprised that if you were watching that game, like it looked like a beautiful day in Tampa. Like
94.
I'm so confused that like, obviously the devastating hurricane that came through and we're just playing ball in front of a packed crowd and the sun's out and everyone's just having a good time. Like I get that shows you that the Bucks are just a darn good football team. I mean, it doesn't matter.
That's what happens when you put a good product on the field. The people will show up.
Yeah.
Rain or shine, they're showing up.
I'll tell you what, it was 94 degrees on the field too. Baker said he had to change his pants at halftime. So it's confirmed that Baker Mayfield has swamp ass. I'll say that on the podcast.
Yeah.
As is very common for a lot of people in Florida. But obviously it's been a tough week with obviously all the stuff going on back home. I know, 20 people that had their houses destroyed, completely ripped up the floorboards, get all new furniture. My house, we're lucky. Shout out to Frank Shields. Our house is up 10 feet, but we had water in places we've never had water before. Just thankfully none in the got in the garage, not in the house. So it was close, but it was good. It was good for the area, to the Bucks to go out and produce, because it's good, just take your mind off some stuff and to watch Baker ball. So I know the Bucks, the team itself, was thinking about that. I don't know how that game was still sold out or close to sell out. I don't know how Bucks fans could get there, just with all the devastation and whatnot. But it's the Florida man, right? That's all they say. They'll show out. They'll show out regardless. But
they were riding dolphins into the stadium. I'm telling you, bro.
I'll tell you. James asked me if there was a dolphin in my pool, and if there was, that he would come down there and try to ride it. But
I would absolutely go down there. I would absolutely go down in a heartbeat.
There we go. But we'll end it there. If you made it to the end, leave a like, comment, subscribe, send it to someone. Fun episode. Not sure if we'll have an episode later this week, simply because I'll be driving 19 hours to Salt Lake City, Utah on Thursday. But we're going to try our best to come out with another one. But if not, we'll see you next week. If not, we'll see you later this week on Friday. But thank you guys for watching. We'll see you guys next time.
See you.
Peace.